Joining me right now for more on this is Marc Short. He's the former chief of staff to Vice President Mike Pence, someone that knows Mike Pence is thinking very well, especially as Pence is considering a potential presidential run. What would South Carolina mean for a possible Mike Pence 2024 presidential campaign, Marc? I mean, how important is that early state to a successful run?
Good morning, Kate. Thanks for having me on. I think the trajectory for a Republican nominee still goes through those first three states. I think there's no doubt that in the last cycle in 2016, when it was competitive on the Republican side, you had 17, 18 candidates, and it went much longer. But I think that's an aberration. I think the reality is that you're probably going to face less than 10 candidates in 2024. The system has a way of weeding out those candidates who can't survive either raising the resources or getting the public attention. And so I would imagine that those first three states are all going to be pivotal to whomever the nominee is in 2024.
It's interesting because I was going to ask you about kind of the, forgetting the timing of when people are getting into the race, but more about the number of people who could be getting into the primary. Because we know in 2016 we saw a large Republican primary field work to Donald Trump's advantage. Do you think, I know you don't think it's going to be as big of a field this time, but do you think a bigger field still works to his advantage this time around?
I think just looking at it from the sheer numbers, sure, Kate. I think that anybody can defend that argument that in 2016, I think there was a greater urge for everybody to sort of upset the apple cart and elect somebody who'll go to Washington, D.C. and disrupt the system. I think there's still some of that, but not to the same extent there was after 8 years of the Obama presidency for Republican primary voters. And so I don't know that that same urge is there. But at the same time, I think that you're going to have a smaller field in 2024. I still think you're going to have several candidates, though. It's not going to be Donald Trump's alone, clearly. And so I do think that, yes, he's going to have a certain amount of still strong, ardent support, I think, because of his record as president. But at the same time, I don't think it's his to walk into. I think it's going to be a competitive field.
And an issue that is sure to come up in this race, in the primary, a big issue that already in the fight over the debt ceiling is entitlements, Social Security and Medicare. Mike Pence talked about it just this morning. Let me play what he said on CNBC.
Well, I respect the Speaker's commitment to take Social Security and Medicare off the table for the debt ceiling negotiations. We've got to put them on the table in the long term.
There's that, Marc, but you also have Republican Senator Rick Scott. He's now reversed course with his proposal that's gotten so much attention, now taking entitlements off the table in the long term. Who's right here?
Well, Kate, I don't think that there's any question as to who's right. The reality is the math simply doesn't work unless you address entitlement reforms. And I think that the former vice president is just going to be honest with the American people, as he always has been. I think you look right now in Washington, D.C., I think, unfortunately, neither party is really, truly being honest with the American people. We are facing a situation in which the actuaries for Medicare and Social Security, not some conservative or left-wing group, but actually the government employees are saying that within the next 10 years, Social Security is going to begin to be having automatic cuts, and actually by 2028 on Medicare. The reality is this is an unsustainable path, and when those automatic cuts go into effect, the people who can least afford them are the ones that are going to feel the consequences. You know, when the programs of the Great Society were passed in the mid-1960s, defense spending was about 40%, entitlements 30%. Today, entitlement spending is 70% of our budget, and defense spending is about 10%. There are some on the right who are saying we can eliminate woke programs in the Pentagon to solve this. That's absurd, and they know better. The reality is that the last place we should be cutting is the Pentagon right now when you face problems with China and a growing nuclear threat in Iran. The reality is that we cannot address the spending problems in the United States unless we have an honest conversation with the American people about entitlement spending. We're on a course, and a course that is going to become incorrectable. The reality is that for the first time since World War II, we now face reality that our debt is equal to or greater than our GDP. And coming out of World War II, Kate, you could draw down defense spending, and you had the prospect of an economic boom. We don't have that today. And we have to have a serious conversation with the American people, and you're going to hear the former vice president have that conversation.
And we will see, because there is, I mean, look, debate over entitlements is not new. We know that. But it's definitely become a new debate and conversation within the Republican Party, because as you pointed out, Republicans are not now on the same place, on the same page when you talk about what should be on the table. It'll be interesting to hear this debate happening and to hear Mike Pence talk about it if and when he jumps into the race. It's good to see you, Mark. Thanks for your time.
Kate, thanks for having me on.